welcome to the Inner Consciousness with me, your host, Rev Harvey L. Bailey. And this evening, my guest will be Mr. Howard Hrobak. Howard, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you in the Inner Consciousness with me. So, Howard, tonight we are going to examine if we rule the world. What do you think about that? If you ruled the world, or, matter of fact, let me start off by asking this question before I even ask you what you would do if you ruled the world. Do you think that any one person should rule the world, or any one country for that matter?
No.
Okay. Elaborate on that. Tell me about that.
No, I don't think it's any one human's right to rule the earth or rule man or rule people or rule anything. I'm at the place in my own experience where I think as attempting to be as conscious as possible would be that humans becoming more conscious can self-rule and live in that harmony.
You say that because in hearing you say that, it makes me think about something. When you say that humans can self-rule, would you say, and this is just my thoughts on it, but would you say that when people try to regulate or rule or control other people, because really that's what it comes down to when you're ruling others, would you say that they lose sight of themselves in trying to control other people? They lose the ability to be self-aware or, control their own selves?
I think the egoic, when one starts to become in that ruling mode, the egoic mind takes over. And once that happens, then it's really hard to know where that person's going, because the egoic mind is about self-gratification rather than the gratification of everything. So my personal philosophy is that we are all connected. So how do you actually rule if we're all connected? From looking at it from that angle, I look at it as it's an opportunity as humans. Can we make that giant step into self-awareness where we can live in harmony, in a harmonious type way on the planet with everything. I mean, everything on the planet, not just other humans, but the planet itself, and do that in a way where we're not actually ruling anybody, but living in total harmony. And that may sound, for some people, it may sound a little, far-fetched, a little Pollyannish, but the fact of the matter is that as humans, we are hoping that we become more aware of everything, of ourselves, of our fellow humans, our creatures that live around us, the planet itself. So hopefully, if we can keep that ball rolling, and that we can come to a point where we're aware enough where we don't need to have one person to rule us, but we can all live in a harmonious consensus type atmosphere, where we're working for the good of not only ourself, but also for the good of all, everything.
I like that. And it's interesting that you would say, that it may sound Pollyannish, because I talk about this war on love, and it's interesting how intricate it is. Most people have no idea, one, that there is a war on love, and two, how it even shows up, And so I did a workshop, a seminar about 2 weeks ago, and I broke down the war on love. But one of the things I explained as I was talking about the different ways you have these generals, as I call them, with the commander-in-chief being the opposite of love, which most people would say is hate, but the opposite of love is fear.
I agree. Hate, fear may lead into hate, but yes, fear is definitely the opposite of hate.
Because if you think about hate, at the root of every hatred is fear. And so fear is this commander-in-chief, but hate is a 5-star general. It is the highest ranking soldier in this army. So everyone focuses on hate and don't see beyond hate as fear. So hate takes all of the blame for it, and hate loves it. But hate's got, two other generals that work with him. And there's this one general called division. And division is probably the worst. I say that division is in charge of the special operations groups.
Right.
Because it does the best black ops that you've ever seen. It would make any group, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Force Recon, it would make the Air Force counterterrorist team, the CIA, it would make all of them turn their head because it gets in and it says, Howard, you are separate and different from me. And so when you were talking about, your belief that we are all connected, that's the vision that makes other people see otherwise. And I remember hearing Wayne Dyer say, one of the biggest lies we all have been taught is that we're separate from God.
Yeah.
And so as long as we believe we're separate from God and we're separate from each other and we're separate from the earth and all the other things, then people are going to want to try to rule over other people. The ego is going to become a problem, all of those things. But when we can start to accept it, and, I don't even think it's Pollyannish. I think it's what we all should be aspiring towards.
I agree. Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Can we make that leap as a human race? I sure hope so. If not, then we continue on the road that we're on, which is self-destruction.
Well, this is how I think. And you let me know how you feel about it. But I think as long as there's people like you and me, and there's others out there who believe this way, we just need to show up more and affect more people.
Yeah.
So as long as there's people like us alive, then at some point we will make that leap.
I agree. Yeah. Whether it could happen in an instant or it could take another few lifetimes.
Exactly.
Hard to know. I totally agree, and I think that's what, the past 15, 16 years I've been involved in the metaphysical world and also in the shamanic world, and, all those philosophies lead me to the conviction of the oneness of all of us, and I try to do my best to expound upon that.
Mm-hmm. And as long as you do that with as many people as you can, because you don't know who you'll touch.
No, you don't.
Spread it on.
You don't know. Right.
Yeah, and right now you're having an opportunity to do that with this show. And for all the listeners and for all the times this will be played and replay, everybody who hears it, they'll get an opportunity to hear, hey, Howard said this, and maybe he's right. Maybe he's on to something.
Yeah.
But with that said, Howard, I am going to dub you for the next 15, 20 minutes as ruler of the world. So I, Harvey L. Bailey, being of no authority whatsoever, do hereby dub thee, Howard Hrobak, ruler of the known world, planet Earth.
Wow.
And so with that, let me ask you, in the realm of politics, sex, and religion, what would you do? What would be changes that you make? What would be things that you leave the same? Are there any laws that you would enact? What would you, as the ruler of the world, do?
I don't know about the laws enacting because we already have thousands and thousands of laws all over the place. But I would certainly would want to start some kind of an educational program where we teach people to get away from having to have a particular book or a particular God or a particular thing to be their savior, and recognize the importance of you, me, each individual knowing their divinity. So that would be probably my foremost thing to do if I was the ruler of the world.
Okay.
Would it help people to stand their own connection to the divine? And that in itself is probably going to be some hard work because there's a lot of entrenched ideas in that whole subject, and in the political world and the religious world about, right and wrong, So there's a lot to overcome, but I think that would be a major part of trying to help people to to come out of the, as Plato said, coming out of the cave and letting go of the fear of the shadows that are keeping you in that cave. So, and if you can let go of that fear of the shadows that are monsters out there, and they're not, they're just shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can break free from all the nonsense that we've been taught for millennia of time. For literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That this is the way it is, and this is the way it's not. It's not the way it is. It's what we've accepted as the way it is. So,
mm-hmm.
so if the scenario is that I am the ruler of the world, that would be my utmost challenge. Would be to help to re-educate the human race on knowing their divinity, knowing that they are already an expression of the divine, and they don't need to have a savior or another human to save them. That they just have to look within. I mean, Jesus said that himself. Jesus said that. It's just, the works that I do, you can do.
Yep, even greater. Mm-hmm.
Even greater. So, I mean, to me, he's to me he was the ideal teacher. And I think once I got into the metaphysical world and I started to understand some of his real teachings, like me, I, and my Father are one, and stuff like that. When I finally realized that he was sending a message out, it wasn't about dying on a stake or giving your blood. It was a message of that you are part of this divine order of things. So that would be a great challenge. I mean, let's face it. We have groups of people that are still very entrenched in a very old philosophy that don't want to give that up. So it would be an interesting challenge, and I mean that would be the first thing. So that, and then as far as politics go, got to get rid of the fear. Got to get rid of the fear. I mean, it's since I was a kid. I was reminiscing about that the other day. I grew up doing in the 60s. I was part of the whole Cold War, which went on for decades, and there was such a fear of communism. Oh, we fear the communists. Well, guess who our biggest trading partner is in the world is? Communist China. And how many people lost their lives because of the fear of communism?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's another fear. So we just keep changing fears, and the fear takes on a new face, a new identity, a new name, but it's still the same old fear. So we keep perpetuating that for time and time and time. And we're going to have a war on this. Well, there's no way you're going to have a war on something you don't even understand. And then secondly, the wars that we have on drugs and war on this and war on that are futile. They're not doing anything. So you have religion changing the idea of how we look at ourselves in the face of the divine. Politics, getting rid of the fear factor, and that would be for everybody, because it's not just our country. There's Muslim world, there's this world, and that world, and they've all been perpetuating this fear thing for
mm-hmm.
for about years. And then as far as sexuality and how we deal with that, let's be a little more open. Let's understand that sexuality is part of our nature. Let's not be so frightened of it to hush it or to make it some ugly thing, because it's not. It's part of our experience as humans. So let's turn it into what it can be, and it can be an incredibly nurturing and loving experience. So
and when you go to sexuality, that can still take you right back to religion, because
mm-hmm.
the religion can limit your expression of your sexuality. And I bring it back to that only because I want you to go a little more into how would you make a change. I mean, like Constantine decided when he had the Bible canonized, he created really the Christian belief as we know it today. He brung together different schools of thoughts. He chose what would be in this one canonized Bible. And, basically it's Pauline religion. Christianity has come to us from Paul instead of from Jesus' brother, but still, it's what we believe today to be the all-holy word of God. Yet at one time, during Constantine's time, there were different books that was taught at different churches from one end of the community to the other end of the community. Some shared books, some had books that other churches didn't have, and everybody kind of had a variation of, of what's now one belief, but they had different variations of it. So for you as the ruler and saying what you said, would you do some of the things that he did in the sense of, because paganism was so large at that time, he kept like December 25th. It was already a celebrated holiday, so he made that the birth of, our Lord and Savior and things like that. Would you soften the transition, I guess is what I'm asking?
Well, I would. My idea would be to help people to understand that there's more to this than just the simple statements or the four Gospels or whatever you want to look at. And first of all, I'm looking at the man Jesus. Jesus was considered a Gnostic.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea of a Gnostic is someone who seeks knowledge. So that would be something I would encourage people to do. And there are more opportunities now than ever in human experience. Knowledge, information is more available now than ever has been in human experience. So there's no excuse for us not to be able to look into things and to check things out. So the whole idea would be to help people to open their minds, and that's probably more of a challenge than anything else. Is how do you help someone open their mind when they've decided to be closed? That's probably more of a challenge than just showing them information. I mean, I've read numerous Gospels besides the four. I've read Timothy and Thomas' Gospel and Judas' Gospel and Mary Magdalene's Gospel, and they're fascinating reads. They're fascinating reads, and just because they're not in the canon doesn't mean they're not worthy of notarization. So there's a lot out there. There's so much out there. For me, one of the greatest writings that I like is the Tao Te Ching, which I consider the most simplest of all the writings. There's only, I think, 96 verses or 96 chapters, and it's just a simplistic way of looking at life. So, but the thing is that, Harvey, that people themselves have to be willing to open their minds, and that I don't know if you can force that upon anyone. Even if you say I'm the ruler of the world, you cannot force someone to open their mind. They have to be willing. You might be able to show them how they can do it and how much life would be so much better if you can do that. It's still an individual evolutionary process. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's a process, and we've made great advances in some ways, and other ways we've gone backwards. So you have religious ideals that are the same now as they were 500, 600, 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and maybe a few little changes, but some of them are still very much the same. So if you keep beating that into someone's head, they have a tendency to believe it. As someone like myself, who if when you say you're in charge, the only thing I can say is, well, it's the opportunity now to open your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Open your mind, expand, see what's out there. See, don't be frightened to look. Don't be frightened to look. I grew up in that. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I grew up in the whole idea of you cannot look at anybody else's teaching. Once I freed myself from that, it was like the world opened up to me. It's like the world opened up, So, but it's almost like I had to go through my fire to get there. You see, so those are things you cannot force upon anybody. You can't even write a law on that. It's almost something that you have to encourage from when someone is an infant, you know. So it's a fascinating subject. It's a fascinating subject.
So give me one or two things that you would do, because you're right, and it's very, very broad. But if you're going to make a change, you got to start somewhere. We all know, the journey of 1,000 miles begin with the first step. So one or two things that you would implement.
Well, I plastering all over as many billboards as you could put up is plastering, what Marianne Williamson said. Don't be frightened of your own greatness. Which is a quote about, that I don't remember the whole thing. For some reason it's eluding my mind, but don't be frightened of your own greatness. Don't shrink back into smallness. Realize the greatness of yourself. So that would be, just getting the information out, plastering it around, because we all know that information that's kept being repeated finally becomes the consciousness of man. If you keep on repeating things long enough, people starting to realize. So if you can do that in a positive way, I mean, it's been done in a negative way for hundreds and hundreds of years. So if you can do it in a positive way,
being done in a negative way.
Right. So I mean, look how fast people go to war. Look how fast people get frightened of ISIS. Look how fast people get frightened of this or that. It's because you keep blasting the people with that. So blast people with good stuff. Blast people with good stuff. I mean, blast them with things like you're a divine being. You're the same as me. We're all the same. We're of the same stuff. We came from the same stuff. If you put blinders on, we would have no idea what I look like. All you would know is what I sound like.
Right.
So getting that into the consciousness would be the first thing, and so plastering it on every media you can would probably be what would come to my mind. Again, I don't see making laws. It's like making laws for against separation or segregation. You can't. If a human doesn't want to do it, it's not going to happen. See, so it's not just about a law; it's about your consciousness. Where do you want to be in consciousness? So that's something that I feel. That's a heavy question. How do you you don't make one thing about humans, we do have free will. So we are given that free will, and what do you do with it is really your choice. And that's the bittersweet thing of the whole human experience, is that we, you, me, people of like mind, we're striving to open ourselves to the good of the universe, and there are still many, many people who want to stay stuck, in a 1,000-year-old philosophy, because that's all they know. Treat women like they're nothing. Treat children like they're nothing. So those are things that have been taught. So it's about plastering that information out there.
Okay, and I just want to tag on to what you were saying, because you make a very good point about repetition. So if I was the ruler, I guess what I would do is some of the TV has to be changed. The media in itself has to be changed, because I noticed about 4 or 5 years ago, there are more horror films coming out than ever before. And I know people love horror films, but to me it's an interesting concept. You want to give your money away to be scared. It's a low vibration that invites. And, of course, I understand that this is not common knowledge. So we have to change what's taught in schools, too. Schools should teach you how to live, not indoctrinate you into a system, but teach you how to live and how to think. So once you understand things like universal laws, then you're open to making your own choices. So I would say, with the changing of the media and then having the schools teach people how they create their own realities. how we play such a large part in what we create. If you think about what's going on in your mind, and if you're not sure what's going on in your mind, look at what's showing up around you.
Yes.
Do you like what's showing up around you? Are you someone who's addicted to drama? Are you someone who's always angry? Are you one of those people who need something to complain about? Well, life is going to give you that because that's what you're asking for. Are you someone who can be happy in the worst situations? Well, if you can be happy in that and you're not just saying, I'm happy in the worst situations, because that'll keep you in the worst situation so you can be happy, but if you can appreciate what you have, then more will be given unto you.
Yes.
And so these are universal laws, and if the schools taught people this, then people would understand, that we can't afford the luxury of a negative thought.
I agree. That's a fair order because of where man is in their own human evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we have people that come into our experience or come into the earth experience, and who are, I would say, like the Christ consciousness or the Gandhi consciousness, where they create this aura of peaceful revolution and stuff like that. And so those kinds of people can help us move forward. The sad thing is that it can be a slow process. The hope is that at one moment we will make that giant leap into the next level of consciousness, where we recognize that we don't need half the things that we've been told that we do need, or half the things or believe the things that we're being told. So it's an interesting time in human experience.
Yeah, I would say that. So,
yeah.
Howard, let's move on. We done rode the religion train down the road. Let's talk about politics.
Yeah. Well,
let's talk about politics. They say religion and politics are the two things that you don't talk about in polite company. Well, I like to believe we're in polite company, and we're breaking that rule tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we have a real circus going on right now in our own country, and I do mean circus.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it all goes. It's what I find fascinating is the temperament of the people who are following certain individuals, and I find that to be more fascinating than the actual who's in front and who's not in front. No, I'm on front. So I don't know. If you have a group of people who are so willing to blindly follow someone who is a complete racist. I mean, you go back in history.
Mm-hmm.
Look how many people followed Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was big here in the United States.
Right.
And we don't like to talk about that. We don't put that in the history books, but he was huge here in the United States. And I'm sorry, Howard, to cut you off, but I just wanted to put that out there. It was only last weekend, I was watching this documentary about this guy, his business, because of, I don't remember what it was he did, but his business was attacked because he had said something publicly or somehow, made a public statement about Adolf Hitler, and, the Nazi Party, which was pretty big in America, destroyed his business.
Right. So that's the thing that fascinates me, is how easily groups of people are swayed. Okay? That's just one instant. You have in the Soviet Union, you have Joseph Stalin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was by some people was considered savior, but he murdered millions of people. So you have this mentality of people wanting to follow someone. We think we need someone to lead us,
mm-hmm.
Our savior type situation. So you have the savior as a religion. You have another savior in the political realm, because this man's going to save us. He's going to make everything right again. And you have that similarity going on in those two genres. And it's fascinating to follow, to look at the human race and see how easily they are swayed. And that's probably more frightening to me. I think that whole thing came home to me during I think it was 2001, 2002, when we got into the war. How easily, as a society, we were fed lies, and how easily we fell into it. And so that fascinates me. It's almost like I would love to see sociology being taught from early age on, that people can understand the nature of humans and how humans over the course of history have easily followed someone or something. You see what I mean? Because humans have been doing this for millenniums.
It's the way we're genetically engineered. All you need to do is find someone who's saying the things that you're afraid to say. Right. You know, as a matter of fact, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm going to dumb this down and make it ridiculously crazy.
Okay.
In the mid-'90s, television, there was a war going on between WWE and WCW. And WWE eventually became the victor in this war. But what they did is exactly what you're talking about. They played to all the stereotypes, but one of the biggest ones was people's hate for their bosses. And so the biggest hero of wrestling at that time was Stone Cold Steve Austin, who had more success in disrespecting his boss and doing things his way. He even kicked his boss's butt several times, one time in the hospital, you know, and people loved it. Why? They were willing to get on the Stone Cold wagon no matter what Stone Cold did, because he was outrageously bold, and people saw in him what they wanted in themselves. And
that's what's happening now in the political process. You have a couple of people out there that are that are very vocal, and actually have absolutely. If you sit back and think about what they've said absolutely nothing.
Yep.
But they're vocal. They're vocal enough to draw a crowd, and the crowd is eating it up. Like, well, you understand what the guy is saying? He's saying absolutely nothing, but you're eating it up.
Doesn't matter.
Come on.
This person is expressing my dissatisfaction and anger, and I need someone to do it because I don't know how to step up and do it myself, or the belief that I am just a peon, so I need someone to champion my cause.
Yes. So it's an interesting time in our society, because we could actually potentially go into another, fascist type leader, where we give everything over to this one guy who's going to take us into this new world, and that's the danger of the political world, because it's like there's a lot of people out there who would, and so here's the parallel. There's a lot of people who follow a religion because they don't want to take the time to study or learn learn the facts, and it's the same way in the political world. They don't want to take the time to look at the whole picture. So the same thing is happening in the political world as is happening in religion. I'm going to turn all my power over to the priest or the new president or the new senator. I don't have the time, and I don't want to take the energy to find out for myself what's really going on here. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's the scary part. I'm giving you my power, and this is so now I'm taking a step back and saying, this is what I would have to do if I was the king of the world. But I would have to help people to realize that you've got to take your power back. You do not have to give your power to a priest, a minister, a politician, or even a mate. Even a mate. So in all three subjects, you have a very similar role. I don't have to give my power to you. And so in religion and in politics and in human sexual relations. I don't need to give my power to you.
And so now I'm going to ask you the same thing here that I asked you before. Give me one or two things that you would actually enact, things that you would do to change politics. You're the ruler of the world. What are one or two things that you would do to change things?
Well, I would definitely have to implement some kind of a mandatory course in school where people were to study sociology, where they actually studied human nature. You go back. I don't care how far you go back. You can go back 1,000 years, 2,000 years. But the course of human nature, I think it's very important that people realize that there's patterns that humans have been following for centuries, and the whole idea of mandatory course to teach you how to start thinking for yourself. How to start thinking for yourself. Yes, you can be part of the whole. Yes, you create a wonderful world for everybody. But how to start thinking for yourself so you're not wrapped up. So that would be my goal would be to an incredible education program on man's social behaviors, how they behave in the whole realm of human experience. So
okay.
Education. And it wouldn't be. It has to be open at the top. It has to be like, this is the way it's been, and yes, we can change it. How do we change it? I'm not going to say we're going to change it this way or that way. Now we're open for dialogue. Let's open up for dialogue, and if we can do that on a whole human race basis, there might be some improvement there. Again, it could happen in a heartbeat, or it could take another couple millenniums. Who knows?
Okay. All right. And so, Howard, I saved the best for last.
All right.
If you rule the world, let's talk about sex.
That's always a good subject.
That's always a good subject.
Mm-hmm.
So, you mentioned earlier about people, we kind of talked about not being able to express yourself sexually. We just touched on that. And then you just said something when we were talking about politics about, being able to be free even in your relationship. And
right.
We find in a lot of relationships, probably more now than over the last 40, 50 years, that the dynamics have changed. And it's to the point where maybe for a lot of couples, neither party is feeling that free. I do some statistics, Arlene and I do for our other show, One Love, One Connection, One Us. That's on the second Thursday of every month. And one of the things that we've recently learned is that though the divorce rate still hovers around 50%, it's actually slightly over, but not significant enough for it to be mentioned since it's not a full 51%. It's still considered 50%. But what we found is that it's been this way since about 1988, that half of the people get married, stay married. But the marriage pool has shrunk. So whereas 88 through 90 and into the early 90s, you had more people getting married. So let's just throw a ballpark figure out. If every year 10,000 couples got married, 5,000 couples stayed together. As of late, fewer people are getting married. So whereas then you had 10,000 and you had 5,000 staying together, now you have 1,000 couples getting married, which means 500 are staying together. So even though the percentage is still the same, the number of people getting married or the number of couples getting married has shrunk. So the percentage is the same, but you still don't really have the same amount of married people. That's actually scary when you understand the math. So it kind of, I guess, to a lot of people, to both parties, people aren't being able to express themselves. They aren't able to feel free in their relationships. So let's tie that into sex. What would you say as the ruler of the world about sex? Would you say people have at it, do what you do? Would you regulate sex? Sex is only for those people who are married? Would you say, you can only do this, but you can't do that? It's against the law to enjoy this and not that? And what would you put out there?
Well, I don't think I wouldn't make any laws to say what is right and what is wrong, because I think we've come a long way in homosexuality, especially in this country and in other modern countries, on the issues of homosexuality and the issues of similar things. So I am grateful for that, that there is an opening to that whole idea that there's other ways of expressing love and sexuality other than just being in a marriage. I mean, I grew up in the whole notion that you had to be married to even have sexual relations, and I found that to be highly unproductive, because if you don't know what the person is like that you're going to be with, after getting married is certainly not a great time to learn that. Yes, there are some people that can and do it successfully, but for the most part, there's a lot of people are thinking more, especially on that subject. They're not willing to put up with the same stuff that was put up by our parents and our grandparents. A lot of parents and grandparents stayed together because they felt it was a duty, or the church made them, or they would be considered outcasts if they didn't. So the whole paradigm on that subject has changed, which I'm grateful for, because the whole idea of marriage really is really kind of about ownership. The Israelites practiced it as a way to to keep somebody as theirs. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people don't want to be owned anymore, and yet we long for relationship. So it's an interesting paradigm going on, because the whole idea of marriage is kind of like owning someone, and the whole idea of living together is, well, I am more free than you are, yet we still have a commitment.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing that's happening in our society. So. And I happen to love Gary Zukav's ideas when he wrote The Seed of the Soul, on the paradigm of marriage is basically doomed from the start, because you're anticipating the person that you're going to be with is going to be exactly the same today,
yes, exactly
the same tomorrow, and that's an impossibility, because none of us stay the same. If we did, we wouldn't go anywhere. You see what I'm saying? So it's becoming rarer and rarer to find two peoples that are willing to go into that arrangement and not go in with the understanding that you may change and I may change, and how are we going to deal with that? So the sexuality part of it is unique, because there's a lot of religious taboos that make us go into the marriage scene, because a lot of religions have taught over centuries of time that you have to be married, otherwise you're an adulterer, you're a fornicator, you're this or you're that.
Right.
And so you have those paradigms still in the back of people's minds. So you have a freer thought on this whole thing now, which I'm really happy about. And yet, again, going back to the idea that most of us do long to be in some kind of a relationship. Male, female, 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 male, male. It doesn't make a difference. The fact of the matter is that we long to be in some kind of relationship with someone. So how do we navigate that? And how do we navigate the sexuality part of it? Because sexuality is part of our experience as whether we're humans or animals, it's part of the experience. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are even with having children, a lot of people are deciding, well, I really don't want children, so let's be together on a different level. Let's be together because we want to accomplish something. Let's be together because we want to do something. Stepping back into the sexuality part, I've been blessed in the past 10, 15 years to have met some really fascinating people who have taught learning how to learning how to love yourself, mm-hmm. learning how to love pleasure, learning how to be perfectly okay with pleasure. And that's one of the, for a long time that was sinful. Everything was sinful. So now the paradigms are being reversed and people saying, you know what, I enjoy pleasure. I enjoy being pleasured. I enjoy giving pleasure. And I'm not seeing any badness in this. I'm not seeing any badness. If you want to create a badness, that's how you want to live, and all the moral self-righteousness that goes around about, same-sex marriage or the same-sex relationships. It's like, if you found someone that you feel really good to be with, let it be, man. Let it be. I mean, what greater gift can you ever find in the universe to find someone that you can walk down the road with and feel perfectly at ease with? What a great experience, no matter what they call themselves, male, female, whatever.
Well, Howard, that's against some people's beliefs, and so when they see it, it just bothers them. And it's interesting how people are bothered by things that really should not be a bother. And I bring this up because one of the things that you mentioned just a few breaths back was about self-love.
Right.
When we get into self-love, we learn that when you love yourself, you can't help but grow in your love for God because, one, you're connected. So the more you put interest into loving yourself, the more it becomes easier for you to love God, but also in doing so, it becomes easier for you to love other people. There's a lot of people walking around with a whole lot of misplaced anger.
Yes.
Just completely lost in their anger. They don't even know what they're angry about. They're angry about being angry, but they don't even have a direction for that anger to go. And so if there's something about you that's different from them, if there's something about you that represents a shadow in them, a part of them that they don't like, then the anger can be geared at you. So if you're in a same-sex relationship, man, woman, and that's not what they believe in, their paradigm has to be the right paradigm. And if you step outside of that, then you're wrong, and your anger can be geared towards them. And it's interesting because the more angry we become, the more our world closes in on us. Angry people don't understand this. People get so angry that they can't see beyond their nose. But when you become angry, your world closes in. So you're not thinking on a broad scale. You're thinking strictly in the realm of the ego, and division has complete hold of you. That general called division has complete hold of you because all you know is self-reference, what I want, what I like, this ain't right because me. And you're not thinking from a broad or a higher vibration. You're just locked into you. And that plays a big part when we're talking about people wanting to express themselves sexually.
Yes. I'm happy that we are at a time when it's being expressed more, and that there's a lot of people willing to at least be open to that idea. Because I grew up in an era where especially in my religious background, where you didn't really even talk about it, and so there was a lot of hang-ups on that. So I think for me, I'm thankful for where I'm at in my own experience right now, and knowing that that I can experience what I would like to experience. But also you also have to be mindful of treating people kindly and being dignified in how we treat others. So it's an interesting scenario.
Yes, it is. And Howard, I really want to thank you for your views and thank you for joining me in the Inner Consciousness this week. It has been a pleasure to have you on here. And I just want to say, this to what we've just been talking about, particularly this last part. I have probably over the last 4 or 5 weeks, so, the last month or so, been telling people that I really, really believe that marriage should come with a 3 to 5 year expiration. Now, this may sound crazy to people, but hear me out. Listen to the logic behind it. It is exactly as Howard said. You see, a lot of people think they know themselves, and I'm going to tell you, because I'll be the first to say there's a lot about me I still don't know. I'm in the
Right.
learning phase. But
Right.
we are always growing. And the less self-aware you are, and if you think you know yourself, then you're not self-aware at all.
Yeah. You're right.
We are constantly changing. And I digress only for a second. I can remember in the early 90s, me and two other guys having a conversation with a mob of people, at least, 12, 13 other people, us trying to tell them when you say, and I was a married man at that time, a happily married man. And some people may say, well, that's probably why you're not married now because of that. But no, the thought was me and this other guy, we were trying to explain to people, you don't know that your marriage will last forever. Everyone goes into it liking to think that it's going to last forever. But there's two people involved, and people change. People do change, and they don't always change at the same rate, and they don't change the same way. I may change to the left, you may change to the right, and after a while, we may find that we have nothing in common, or we don't know how to get back to each other. I'm not saying that we can't, but we may not know how to. We may not have the tools. We may not have the support. So when I say marriage should come with a 3 to 5 year renewal, you have to take continuing education, and you have to accumulate so many credits, and you can't do your credits on your own. So let's say 90 credits in 3 years. I'm married to someone. I can't go off and get 30 credits and then try to get the other 60 credits with my spouse. Oh, that's a no-no. If I show up without Shaniqua, I'm done. You come back when she comes. You know what I mean? The two of you have to do it together because it's a requirement of your marriage. And if you don't, at the end of 3 years, submit the 90 continuing education credits, then your marriage is automatically annulled at that point. And the reason I say that is because of exactly what we're talking about. People change.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I can see that. Yeah.
People change, and learning skills will help you stay together. And plus, here's another thing. Let's say it's time for your fourth renewal, right? And one person is really resistant to it. Well, that's a huge sign right there.
I would think so. Yeah.
That's a huge sign that you may not have seen if the way the system currently is, the way it is now. You're married forever till death do you part. But you may not have seen this. When this person is making every excuse in the world not to go to these classes with you, you know this marriage is in some serious trouble because the classes are to help you learn better coping skills to keep your marriage together. And they don't want to go to that. There's a problem right here.
Yes. Agreed. Totally agreed. Yeah, that could be a whole talk show by itself. Whole idea of marriage and where it stands in our because like I said, you could spend hours on that one for sure.
I might just do that. I'll give that some thought.
Yeah.
The requirements to keep marriage going. But again, Howard, it was great having you in here.
Thank you for asking me. Yes.
Oh, you're welcome, man. Yeah. Is there any closing thoughts that you'd like to put out about anything that we talked about or anything that we didn't talk about?
No, I love the words of Rumi, the poet Rumi, and he said, this was like 800 years ago or whatever. There's a field. It's beyond the idea of right and wrong, and I'll meet you there. And I just love that, and I've kind of adopted it as my own because there's so much more out there than we could ever imagine. So just continue being open and receptive. As Michael Bernard Beck would say, I am open and receptive to more good than I've ever expressed, experienced, manifested, or imagined in my life till now. And that's how I try to live my life, just being open.
All right. Well, Howard, let me ask you, is there anything that you're doing in the community that you want to share with everybody? Any, public announcements you want to make?
Not really. I enjoy the different groups that I'm part of. I'm part of a shamanic world. I'm also part of I'm loosely part of a poly community, which is growing, and so I'm kind of in a number of different things that I like and that I'm enjoying, and meeting people and just enjoying as much as I can about life,
All right. Well, all right. Howard, thank you for being on, and you have a great day.
Yes. You too, man.
All right. And as we come to the end of the show, I would just like to make a few announcements. I will be speaking at Indigenal in downtown Baltimore. That is on Reed Street, and it's going to be a 10-strand DNA activation meditation. That will be on Monday. It is not this coming Monday, which is the 1st of February, but the following Monday. So we're talking about, the 8th of February, and that'll be at 6:45 p.m. that I'll be down at Indigenal. Also, in the middle of the month, next month, February, I have the Relationship Survival Workshop coming up. The Relationship Survival Workshop is going to be held in White Marsh or Nottingham, and it's going to be Saturday, February the 27th at 12 p.m. And for more information about that, you can call me at 443-388-0356. That's 443-388-0356. It will be Saturday, February 27th from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is a relationship intensive course. We're going to break down how to work on your relationship and give you the tools to keep your relationship going strong. Now and again, as with all things, the two people involved has to make that decision. So there's no guarantees outside of you're going to get some great information that if the two of you work at it, it will work for you. So that has been the show. And as always, I just got to tell you, what you become is up to you. Now, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but if it's the game of life you want to win, you must take the time to go within. Good night, everyone.